Hello there! Since the last tips video a few weeks ago, I've been collecting more tips from you guys in the comments, and I've also written down a bunch of websites that I use on a daily basis to make the game more enjoyable for me. So we'll go through the tips first, and then we'll go through the websites. Let's get right into it. The first tip actually took me way too long to figure out, and that's about the emotes. When you open the Emote General tab, the emotes are sorted in what the game calls the default order, but I really have no idea what that order is supposed to be. However, you can actually change this to alphabetical, which I never realized. That just makes finding emotes a bit easier. Similarly, you can set Aetheryte tickets to be used automatically. In the teleportation screen, you can click the cogwheel and decide when you want your Aetheryte tickets to be used. I've defaulted it to always use for costs above 1000 gil. The next one is really useful for all crafters, and this also took me way too long to figure out. Whenever you right-click an item in your crafting log, you can look at the recipe tree and the materials list. The recipe tree will just help you figure out how to create a certain item, which is especially useful whenever you're trying to craft high-level stuff. Whenever you decide to craft an item, you can open the materials list, and that will tell you what raw materials you need to craft the final item. You can also tick display only materials with insufficient stock to figure out what you actually need to buy. And then whenever you need to collect items, you can use the iSearch tip from the last video. Also, this allows you to stop having to calculate how many materials you need to craft a certain amount of items, because you can just put the desired amount in the top right and it's going to calculate that for you automatically. Whenever you change zones, by default, this menu is going to hide itself again, and you'll have to reopen it from the crafting log. However, by pressing the lock in the top right, you can actually lock the window in place so it doesn't hide. The same is also true for the map, by the way. There's also a lock that you can press. This is really useful whenever you're gathering, for example. Now, speaking of crafting, let's assume you want to do the Grand Company turn-ins for leveling your crafters and gatherers. You have to know what items you want to craft, and a lot of people run to the Grand Company to do that. However, you can also just go into your timers page and then click on Next Mission Allowance, and that's going to show you exactly what items they want. So that's just going to save you one trip to the Grand Company. You can also use this page to figure out how much time is left on your ventures and when you'll need to return to your summoning bell. Now let's assume you're at your Grand Company and you want to turn in items. And this one was mentioned by a lot of you guys. Whenever you turn in items, just spam your confirm button. By default that's numpad 0, but you can find it in keybind system right at the top. I've bound it to G because I can also use it on doors and so on. Now whenever you're turning in items, all you have to do is spam G until you're done. So this is a nice little time saver. In your item settings inside the character configuration, there's a setting that's called sort items into sections based on category. This will change the sorting method in the inventory, and I actually really prefer this one. By default, the game sorts items based on categories, but without spacing between the categories. So you have your normal gear, you have consumables, and then you have other items. Using this method, they get sorted on different pages. This way it's a lot easier to, at a glance, distinguish between items, and you can also see new items more easily because they get sorted on the first page. Something else that I recommend you look into is the clock type. There's 3 clocks in Final Fantasy. You have your local time, your Eorzea time, and the server time. You can see this in the top right. LT is the local time. You can actually press that clock as well, and it will change to server time, and then it will change to Eorzea time. Inside the settings, you can activate more clocks and just have all 3 of them up. Eorzea time is needed for gathering nodes especially, because they will only be up at a certain Eorzea time. To help you with that, you can also set a timer whenever you right-click on the location that the timed item is farmed from. However, later on I'll show you a website that makes the whole thing even easier. If you're struggling with performance issues in big cities, then there's a setting that's kind of hidden that people don't really think about when it comes to performance. Inside System Configuration, you can click on Other Settings and then adjust the character and object quantity. And this is just going to reduce the amount of characters displayed on your screen at a time, which can massively improve your performance in big cities. During busy hours, the difference between minimum and maximum is about 20 FPS for me. I find setting this to normal is the most sensible because it's a nice mix. On maximum, a lot of characters in the distance won't even have name tags because they're too far away. Whenever you're running around a big city and you hear a bard that's playing a sick song, you can do /BGM for background music to disable all background music. You can also macro this if you want to and put it somewhere on your screen. It's also useful when I'm watching videos on the site that have music in the background, as I can disable the in-game music with the click of one button and still keep my in-game audio. Whenever you zoom in, you can actually go into first-person mode by activating a setting. You can find that in Control General, switch to first-person view when fully zoomed in. Right below that is another setting that I would recommend disabling, which is enable camera effects when initiating actions. This will just cause your camera to shake during certain abilities. I don't like this in late game raids especially, because it just makes it harder to see things for me. In your HUD layout, whenever you're sorting out your UI, you can actually hold Shift to enable Snap on Grid, which can help you align the elements to the screen. The last two tips here are for in-duty. The first tip is focus targeting. When you right-click someone, you can set them as focus target. The default key binding to do that automatically is Shift F, but a lot of people use that as a hotkey. You can go into your keybinds and change it inside the targeting section. It's called Set Focus Target. I've rebound this to my V key on the keyboard, which by default is Flip Camera, which is really not that useful of a button at all. Whenever done with a duty, a lot of people run to the exit, but you can actually just press U, open the party menu and press Leave. Now that we're done with the tips, let's move on to the useful websites. The first website that I use on a daily basis is FFXIV To Do, and this will give me a checklist for my character on weekly and daily things that I can do. What's great about this is that you can customize the daily and weekly activities, you can check them off, and whenever the reset happens, they're going to become available again. So I find this super useful for keeping track on whether I already did my weekly hunts, Wander's Tale, all that stuff. Just register your character and then click Customize to set whatever you want to do. Garland Tools, or more specifically Garland Data, is one of the most versatile websites on this list. You can use the search function on this website to research items as well as quests. So let's say you want to find out where a certain item can be purchased from. For example, a dye that you see on the fashion report. You can type in the item name and it's going to show you the vendors that you can acquire the item from. If the item can't be bought, it's also going to show you where items drop and so on. It's also useful for researching quests. Let's say you want to unlock a certain feature and you know that it's tied to a certain quest. However, that quest isn't available to you. You can type the quest name in the search and then see the prerequisite required quests to do before that and track them all the way back to the first one. For crafters, this is useful because it's going to show you items required to craft certain things, as well as the skill requirements. It also helps you figure out how to acquire items that you need for crafting. So you can easily tell that, for example, you need a botanist to get a certain material for a recipe that you want to do. The website layout is a little bit confusing at first with the little boxes, but it makes sense once you've used it for a while. Another website that's especially useful for crafters is FFXIV Teamcraft. This has various features that are really useful for crafters, such as crafting simulation. You can post crafting rotations with it. You can generate crafting macros and whatnot. However, it's also really useful for people who don't craft because it has a tool called the Currency Spending Guide. Here, just enter whatever currency you want to get rid of. Let's say Tombstones of Poetics or Grand Company Seals. All you have to do is enter the currency, the amount you have, and what world you're on. Then the website is going to fetch the market board data, and it's going to give you a list of all the items you could spend your resource on. So at that point, what you want to look at is the potential total guild gain, but also how many of that item have actually sold in the last week to see whether that's an item worth buying. Because there's a few items that do sell sometimes, like orchestrion rolls, but it's definitely not a guaranteed sale. You also want to be aware whether the current market price is just really inflated. And a tool to help you with that is called universalis.app. You can type the item name in here and then compare prices across worlds inside your data center, and also see the historical prices of items. I use this whenever I make any bigger purchases. Let's say I'm crafting and I want to stay as cheap as possible to increase the profit margins. I can decide when and on what world to buy the items. This next one is a must-have for any gatherers. When I was starting off, I was struggling with the time nodes because I never knew whenever they spawned. You can track it inside the gathering log, but the default alarm that the game offers you is a bit fiddly. I don't like using it at all. FFXIV Gathering makes it a lot easier. When you go on the website, you can sort by expansion, and then you can also sort by the node type. For example, when I go on unspoiled, that's only going to show me the white and purple scripts. If you only want to farm particular nodes, you can also click on them, and that's going to put it into the watching category. And then finally, you can also enable alerts. So click on alerts on, and then just enter the time frame that this node is active in. This is just going to make collecting all that stuff a lot easier. What I've done to make gathering profitable for me is under favorite items inside the market board, I've stored all the folklore materials. So now when I log in, I go through the list and see if any of them are worth gathering, usually above 1000 gil. And then on FFXIV gathering, I just tick the items that are worth a bit of gil that day. And whenever I'm not in duty and one of them comes up, I might as well travel over there and gather it. So that way I can make some easy gil on the side. If you regularly do hunts, I recommend you look at FFXIVhunt.com. This is useful for all hunt targets, including the daily ones. Let's say you have a weekly target. Those are the B ranks. So on the left, you sort by B ranks, the expansion that the B rank is in. And then what I do is I press Ctrl F, which lets me search the website for a specific term, and I just type in the weekly target name. I jump immediately to the target, and then I just press spawn points. And just like that, I immediately know where to find that target. For people who like to collect stuff, there's another website called FFXIV Collect. In here you also have to enter your character, and afterwards you're able to track basically everything about your character. So for example, we can look at the mounts that we farmed so far. It's going to tick them off for us if we have them. It's going to show a percentage of players who already own that mount, which gives you a good indication for how hard that is to get. And if we decide we want to get an item, we can also click on it, and it's going to give us a source. It works the same way for achievements, minions, orchestrion roles, blue magic, emotes, all that stuff. But it's especially useful to track your collection. If you own a house or an apartment, then this website right here is extremely useful for you to figure out what items you want in there. Not only is this going to give you a general list of items that you can get, so for example, this lets us search for fireplaces or bookshelves, but it actually gives you an image of how that item looks as well. So no longer do you have to place items to see how they look. In addition to that, it's also going to tell you the source, how to acquire the item, whether you can craft it or not, and what materials you need if you can craft it. This is a must-have for anyone that has a house or an apartment, basically. The last website on this list is actually a Twitter link, but hear me out, okay? There's this weekly event that happens in the Gold Saucer called the Fashion Report. In here you can earn a lot of MGP for just coming dressed in the right items. This Twitter account right here is pretty popular in the Final Fantasy community because it just posts the weekly fashion report, usually on Fridays if I remember correctly. And this will tell you what you need to get an easy 80 points or 100 points. So just buy whatever gear or dice are listed here, and you're going to get an easy 80,000 MGP once a week. And those are actually all the tips I have for now. If you guys have any more websites that are must-haves for you, let us know down below in the comments. If you haven't seen the other 2 tips videos, they're on screen right now. And if you have any more questions, I stream regularly on Twitch right now. So if you're interested in live streams, feel free to head over there. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.